The topic I'm going to be going over and explaining today is terrorism. The definition of terrorism is the use of violence and intimidation, mostly against civilians, to cause fear or to gain power. They may also achieve political or militant goals. The use of violence, though, may bring out specific political issues going on. The first group I will talk about is ISIS, with other names being Al-Qaeda, the ISI, and Daesh, which means the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. The next group I will be talking about is Boko Haram, which is currently allied with ISIS. And finally, Hezbollah, which is another group associated with ISIS and their goal, which is to create a separate Islamic State. Now let's talk a little bit about ISIS. ISIS was created in 2004 along with the creation of Al-Qaeda as well. Zarqawi was a leader at the time and was heavily influenced by the caliphate idea. He wanted to create a separate Islamic State, and he wanted to be the leader of it as well. Now let's talk about 9/11. 9/11 was a horrifying terrorist attack that took place on September 11, 2001. During this attack, 3 hijackers took a plane and crashed into the World Trade Center in New York and the Pentagon located in Washington, D.C. During this attack, 3,000 people were killed, along with everyone on both planes. The hijacking of 9/11 was one method out of many that terrorists will use during an attack. For example, car bombs, assassinations, or even suicide bombings, along with shootings and kidnappings. All of these methods sound pretty similar because they are all achieving the same goal of fear that the terrorists will want. ISIS attacks many countries and areas around the world. The attack on November 2015 was the deadliest since 2004 bombings, both carried out by ISIS. The bombing in Paris showed us that ISIS morphed from a regional to a global threat, a threat that won't decrease unless something is said or done about it. Another area that ISIS attacked was a town in Libya. ISIS set fire to a hospital, killing over 22 innocent people and murdering many others. This caused political issues because the leader was overthrown. Another war that Zarqawi was involved in was the Iran-Iraq War. This war was between 2 groups of Muslims, the Shia and the Sunni. This war was first led by Zarqawi. During this war, 1.5 million innocent people were killed and 1,000 people were injured. Also, $200 billion were spent on this war. The U.S. joined because of 9/11 and weapons of mass destruction. Those were their motives to join the war. The final person I will talk about today that is associated with ISIS, although there are many others, is Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was one of the main people who shaped Zarqawi's views on religion and even terrorism as well. Osama helped Zarqawi create his own Islamic group, which turned out to be ISIS later on. Osama's views in the radical Islamists, one being Abdullah Azzam, helped shape Zarqawi into what he was then. It also changed the future, and not only what we think about terrorism, but actually what it turned out to be today. Also, all of the people I have explained so far with ISIS believe in jihad, which is Islamic holy war. They want this to occur versus the outside threats. That might be the US or its allied Shia population, along with many other groups. Iraq is one country out of many suffering from terrorism at the moment, and becoming the main area where terrorism takes place. Iraq has been through over 2,415 attacks since 2014 and suffered from 6,960 deaths as of 2014 as well. The US invasion of Iraq, I talked about earlier, didn't help at all because it made Iraq more vulnerable to more attacks in the future. This is causing more conflict and may cause another war to happen in the future because of tension that is building up between the US and Iraq. Now that we have the main part of ISIS covered, it's time to move on to Boko Haram. Boko Haram is an Islamic group located in the West Africa province. They are also known as a jihadist group or a terrorist organization. They believe in the caliphate idea. In fact, they are allies with ISIS at the moment. Abu Bakr Shekau is the leader of this group at the moment, after the death of Mohammed Yusuf previously. Because of Abu Bakr, Boko Haram in America is known as the face of terror. Abu Bakr specifically is known for having a sick and twisted mind based off his sadistic actions. Because little is known about him or his group, they spend most of their time working in the shadows. Recordings come out every now and then, though, to mock the Nigerian government, making them feel powerless and weak. Boko Haram is known for mostly kidnapping or killing done in the area. Rarely do they leave Nigeria. But another thing to note is that the group's work is done through captured child soldiers, while Abu Bakr and Muhammad would work in hiding. Muhammad, on the other hand, was a little bit more violent. He was known as the founder of this group, and the group actually rose from a movement that evolved into something more violent. Although, before I said, the group was mostly known for kidnappings and killings, which is true, they were also known for bombings along with mass executions. He mostly keeps the violence inside the borders of Nigeria, but some of it will reach past the borders, affecting other areas. Again, they began as a non-violent organization, but after they began working with ISIS in 2015, the violence truly began. The next thing we are going to be talking about now is the siege of Mohammed Yusuf's hideout. After another attack arranged by Boko Haram on July 30th, 2009, the Nigerian government finally figured out where he was hiding and seized his HQ. Inside the hideout, they found many children from poor families, along with children from other areas like Niger and Chad. Another thing you might want to know is that these children were enrolled in religious studies to trick anyone like parents or families, but the children are actually being trained to become killers or child soldiers. Yusuf was later captured and arrested, but he later died in police custody. Now it's time to talk about the next group, Hezbollah. Hezbollah was founded in 1982. The creation of the group was heavily influenced by the former supreme leader of Iran. The group means Party of God. Now we're going to be talking about Hassan Nasrallah. He is known as the leader of Hezbollah at the moment. He also founded it after a civil war breaks out in Lebanon. Hassan created the group to get rid of Israel's occupation of Lebanon at the time. Over the years, Hassan converts to believer of the caliphate idea as well. He doesn't change anything about his group until the death of his brother, who was killed by the Israelite forces. This fuels Hassan's anger and hatred towards Israel, causing him to act out with mass shootings, kidnappings, and even bombings as well. The Muslims believe the Prophet had no instructions on who the Prophet should be, and that anyone could be the leader if they wanted, but certain groups are excluded today. A terrorist attack that Hezbollah carried out was helped by the Russian and Iranian forces. These attacks took place all around Syria and consisted of a conflagration, which is a massive fire, which you may know as a forest fire or wildfire today. This took the lives of over 400,000 people, which was allowed by their own president and the lack of protection. An area that Hezbollah impacts is the US because of the amount of weapons Hezbollah and Iran is collecting at the time. It is becoming a huge threat to the US along with their other allies in the region. Though Israel's response to the threats from the terrorist group was bombing strikes against them and Syria, the consequence of war would negatively impact Iran because of how much money was spent on the wars in the past.